The Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 was the beginning of a new era. The criminalization of marijuana only made it more popular, with its growth being possible due to it being widely available in the black market. Marijuana was imported illegally from the southern border, where it is easy to pass over the border. However, this was due to change on November 6 of 2012, when the Initiative 502 was put on the statewide ballot in Washington. Initiative 502 was a proposed measure to legalize production, possession, delivery, and distribution across Washington state. The majority vote was supportive of the measure, making the use of recreational marijuana legal in the first state of the U.S. This led to many other states also pushing measures to legalize recreational use of marijuana and being successful. The United States Congress passed the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906, being one of the first changes to actually strengthen poison laws. The so-called poison laws were laws that regulated marijuana and ensuring proper packaging and licensing was used during the sales of marijuana and other marijuana-based products. There were many more acts and bills passed to further strengthen the laws, but nothing came close than the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 that eventually made possession of marijuana illegal under federal law. The effects of marijuana have been talked about for decades. In 1977, the Department of Human Resources conducted research on the effects of marijuana on the body and brain. They found that marijuana could be used for pain relief as well as relaxation, but it has negative effects on the lungs if you smoke it as well as the heart. The study also gave ways of using marijuana responsibly and how, if used appropriately, could be very useful for people after surgery or traumatic events.
Another big issue in this country right now has to do with the legalization of marijuana. You gave an interview to the New Yorker's David Remnick, and you said that you thought smoking pot was a bad habit, but you didn't think it was any worse for a person than drinking. Now that contradicts the official Obama administration policy, both on the website of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, and also the fact that marijuana is considered a Schedule I narcotic along with heroin and ecstasy. Now, do you think you were maybe talking just a little too casually about it with Remnick and the New Yorker, or are you considering not making marijuana a Schedule I narcotic?
Well, first of all, what is and isn't a Schedule I narcotic is a job for Congress.
I think it's the DEA that decides that.
It's not something by ourselves that we start changing. No, there are laws undergirding those determinations.
Would you support that move?
But the broader point, I stand by my belief, based I think on the scientific evidence, that marijuana for casual users, individual users, is subject to abuse just like alcohol is, and should be treated as a public health problem and challenge. But as I said in the interview, my concern is when you end up having very heavy criminal penalties for individual users that have been applied unevenly and in some cases with a racial disparity. And I think that is a problem. Over the long term, what I believe is if we can deal with some of the criminal penalty issues, then we can really tackle what is a problem not just for marijuana, but also alcohol, also cigarettes, also harder drugs, and that is try to make sure that our kids don't get into these habits in the first place. And the incarceration model that we've taken, particularly around marijuana, does not seem to have produced the kinds of results that we've set. But I do offer a cautionary note, and I said this in the interview. Those who think legalization is a panacea, I think they have to ask themselves some tough questions too. Because if we start having a situation where big corporations with a lot of resources and distribution and marketing arms are suddenly going out there peddling marijuana, then the levels of abuse that may take place are going to be higher.
The NIDA did a study on the number of minors getting their hands on marijuana and how the legalization of marijuana made this number go up drastically. The NIDA also explained that prolonged use of marijuana on the developing brain can lower IQ by nearly 10 points. This statistic is devastating with the number of people with developing brains using the drug. One of the biggest risks is edible marijuana. This is due to the effects not kicking in for 40 minutes to an hour, so it is very easy to take a very large dose. The high dose can have very bad effects on your heart and brain. The government eventually became more aware of this issue and started regulating purchases more heavily. However, as government began cracking down on marijuana sales, the minors that were purchasing the drug found people to supply them that were of age. The government watch over the drug cannot stop minors from getting their hands on it, and thus making the line between legal and illegal very shaky. The legalization of marijuana is a triumph for some but a tragedy for many. The amount of people that marijuana has affected has increased drastically, and with the social acceptance of users of the drug, many minors believe that marijuana is a cool or a trend, but the negative effects that it has had on the developing brain make the pros a lot less than the cons. As marijuana is continued to be studied, the benefits or negative effects will present themselves, but as of now, the drug doesn't have enough research to say that the pros outweigh the cons. The medical benefits are life-changing, but the recreational use may be a problem for future generations. The final verdict, if the drug is good or not, is still being discovered. Until then, we have to learn more and experience how the drug is impacting society.
So this kind of got buried in some other news this week, but tell me, how significant is this? Are these moves?
Well, so the two big ones were California, which is an eighth of the economy, and probably more than an eighth of the cannabis industry and cannabis consumption. And Massachusetts, which is not so big, but it means for the first time legal cannabis is on the I-95 corridor. And so that's going to have a big supply impact up and down the East Coast.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yes.
It's both.
It's one or the other or both.
Right.
I think it's pretty clear. I think it's been clear for a couple of years now that cannabis prohibition is broken beyond repair.
And why is that exactly?
Well, the evidence for it is that we have a $40 billion illicit market in cannabis.
And it's actually the largest illicit market, bigger than all the other things we hear about.
But yes, 20 years ago, it was a third the size of the cocaine market. It's now 3 times the size of the cocaine market.
So is your point that basically to enforce all this, the law enforcement, we just can't do it. The genie's out of the bottle.
Exactly.
I mean, it is just, so
Exactly.
might as well regulate it, but you know, not all regulation is the same. So what do you make of these policies that have been put in place?
The ones that have been put in place are not the legalization policy that I think most of us who work on this academically would have recommended. So look, the gain from legalization is you get rid of an illicit industry, you get rid of some arrest and incarceration, you probably improve police-community relations in tough neighborhoods. That's all of the good, and you restore respect for the law. A law that 40 million people break every year is not a good law. The downside is that you could have more people using, which I don't regard as a problem, since I don't see any evidence that using a little bit of marijuana is bad for anybody.
But isn't the
But you can have
problem-
people using a lot.
Right, the heavy users. There's an acronym for this, the DNDs. I never
Right.
heard that before.
DND, daily, near daily users.
Daily, near daily, and that's not a good thing because there are harmful consequences.
There are harmful consequences, particularly for younger people.
Right.
And there are a lot of daily, near daily users. This is defined as reporting on a survey using 25 days or more in the past month.
Nope.
And that's 8 million people.